Welcome to the Grlz Collective, where community isn't just a word, it's a practice. Here we gather to read, to listen, and to tell the stories that shape our culture. From book club conversations that challenge how we think and feel, to interviews that spotlight voices, building, healing, and leading in real time. This is a space for honest dialogue, shared wisdom, and collective growth. We believe in culture with context, conversations with purpose, and community that shows up. These are our stories, these are our conversation, and this is the Grlz Collective.
Hey family, welcome back to Grlz Collective Podcast, where we turn conversations into connections and connections to culture. From book club discussions to interviews to street conversations, we're always creating space for her voice and her story. If you're new here, my name is Sierra, and today we're sitting down with someone whose words are shaping generations. And this month, we're talking about something real. From survival to softness, she blooms anyway. Because for a lot of us, survival wasn't a choice, it was a requirement. But what does it look like to finally soften, to heal, to become beyond what tried to break you? Today's conversation is going to take us there. Today, we're sitting down with a woman who didn't just survive, but she built something from it. Porshe Colts, founder and director of Breaking Barriers No Boundaries Incorporated, a nonprofit dedicated to mentoring young girls and helping them to see beyond their circumstances. Her story starts with loss, but it doesn't end there. It evolves into purpose, faith, and impact. So, family, help me welcome Porshe Colts. Hey,
Hey,
how you doing today?
I'm doing well. I'm happy to be here.
I'm so happy and delighted to be here with you today. And, before we get deep into you and your story, we like to start things off brown girl style. And we like to warm up with a little game. Are you down, Miss Porsche?
I'm down. Let's do it.
Okay, so I'm going to say something. You tell me if it's survival mode or softness and why. Okay?
Okay.
Okay. Not asking for help.
Survival mode.
Why?
Because when you're so used to doing things on your own, that tends to be something that shows that you've asked for help before at some point in time, and either no one helped you or it landed in some type of disappointment or rejection. So now you've reverted to just not asking for help at all. And so now you're in survival mode.
Like that response. What about always being the strong one?
Ooh. So that can be survival mode and or soft because it starts off as survival mode when you're always having to be the strong one, whether that's being strong at home, being the strong friend. And that's because a lot of people have depended on you and you've been a dependable person. And so at some point when you realize that you're that strong person, when it's time for you to actually need someone, it's hard for other people to identify when you really need assistance or for someone to be there. So you then have to learn how to grow into the soft portion of just really letting go of being strong. And then that's the door to lead you to being soft when you're finally able to let go. So that can be on both.
I totally agree. I think we all have played both parts on that question there. What about
Mhm.
taking time to rest?
Softness. That's soft mode.
And
Because
it's
at some point you realize that rest is needed. You have to do it. Otherwise, you will burn out and get drained, and you won't be beneficial to yourself with keeping your health, keeping your mind, and if you're spiritual, your spiritual self together. So it's definitely leading into your soft life.
I love that answer. What about setting boundaries with family?
Ooh,
It's a little tough one there.
that's a tough one. Oh wow, that's a good question. That can be. I'm gonna say survivor mode because family is we don't get to choose our family. Our family is our family, and they're there. So sometimes we have good family, sometimes we have not so good family. So a lot of times it might be hard to break away or create boundaries between your family members. And when you do start, it's hard for them to understand because you've been in a cycle of normalcy in your family. And that's kind of a tough one. So I have to say survivor because at some point, some people never set boundaries with their families. They'll continue to go on a path and not have any boundaries, and then they'll be suffering in silence, or they'll feel attacked all the time because they don't speak up or say anything when they should be setting boundaries with their family. So I'm gonna say that's gonna be survivor mode.
I agree because I think setting boundaries too is also about growth. And like you said, we don't choose our family, but there's things that happen where you gotta be like, okay, enough is enough. I gotta set
Mhm.
something to let you know, don't keep doing this to me, like, and that is very part of survival mode. Okay, what about putting yourself first without guilt?
That's softness. That's softness. Because again, like I stated before, you've come to a point where you've learned to put yourself first. And for a lot of people, that can be tough because from the outside it could look like you're arrogant or you're selfish. That's what people love to say. Oh, you're a selfish person, or they'll try to throw those words in there because you do put yourself first. However, if you don't take care of you, who's going to take care of you?
Exactly. And with me being the only child, I was always told like, you're selfish, you're selfish. I'm like, no, I
Mhm.
love me. I gotta take care of me first because how
Mhm.
I'm supposed to be a good friend or good partner to you if I can't take and love on me first. So I do agree
Mhm.
with you. That is definitely a softness. And what about overworking to prove your worth?
Ooh, that's survivor mode.
Okay.
Survivor mode. And I say that because at some point, if you're overworking, I think that that's because there's something or a part where you always feel like you have a point to prove, or you always have to achieve and do this and X, Y, and Z. And a lot of people are guilty of that. If we're just being honest, a lot of people are really guilty of that because maybe at some point they felt like if they don't achieve something, then they wouldn't be important, or maybe it's something that happened in their past where something happened and they were told, well, you can't do this. And then they're going to say, well, I can do this and I'll show you that I can do this. So I think that's a bit of survival mode when you always having to overwork or overachieve just to prove your point. When the truth is, you are already enough and it's already inside you.
I like that response because I too have got to a point in my life where I felt like I had to prove something to someone. I'm like, what do I have to prove to them for? It's about
Mhm.
me. What makes me happy? That's what's going to make me happy. I don't have to show the world everything. So I do agree with you on that one. All right. And so that actually just brings me into my next question to you. Do you think a lot of women even realize they're still in survival mode?
No, I don't think a lot of women realize that they're in survival mode because again, if you've been doing something for a long time, it's a pattern and it has become a part of your behavior and your lifestyle. So once you're used to doing something, it's hard to break from that. So if you're used to overworking, overachieving, or just being in that survival mode, it's not going to feel like survival mode to you.
Hmm.
Like I can work, 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 and continue to. There are things that I continue to do over and over, and it's like I have to do it. I have to do it. And there's people like they'll look at me and they say, "No, you don't. Why don't you just step back and relax and take a break?" And you know, that's when in my mind it may click, but at the end of the day, deep in my heart, I'm like, no, but it has to get done. So I think that's definitely something where a lot of women they don't realize that they're in survival mode.
So let's go to our man on the street.
Hi, we're the Grlz Collective, and we are out here at Soda City. I'm going to ask you your name, your age, and where you're from.
I'm Tona Buck, at 55. My name is Diana. I'm from Trenton, New Jersey, and I'm 57.
April's theme was sexual assault awareness. It was her body, her voice, and her choice. And now, again, we're moving to May to where survival into softness. She blooms anyway. May brings around springtime, the flowers, and, you know, we are going to bloom regardless of any circumstances. So I do want to ask you a question. So it's a finish the sentence question, but I'm going to ask you from 5 categories to choose one, right?
Okay.
So the first category is survival. The second is our April to May connection, survival to softness. Our third is neurodiversity. Our fourth is softness, and our fifth is growth.
I like softness focus.
All of them are good. Let's do survival.
All right. So finish this sentence. Softness for me looks like
Being kind. Waking up every day, making a choice to be kind to people.
that is a beautiful statement. I mean, dead serious, because I try to make that for myself every day. But you got people, cashiers, drivers, people that will really push you out of your intention for the day. Finish this sentence. I knew I was leaving survival mode
When I didn't have nightmares, daymares, anxiety, I went from being a victim to a survivor to now a conqueror with purpose. When I could tell my stories, tell what I've been through, and I'm not crying and I'm not upset. And it's like having a scar, right? You keep picking at it, it'll still hurt. It's still there. But now I can look at the scars, know where they came from, and they don't hurt anymore.
Alrighty, so again, I want to thank you guys, and thank you for taking a few minutes of your time and answering our questions and playing our games. So again, this is the Brwn Grlz Collective. Make sure if you're not, that you're following, you like and subscribe.
And I'm gonna say it again, I wish them nothing but the best. I love seeing my young Black sisters doing positive things.
And what is interesting is when we step outside this space, the conversation shifts. This is where culture comes in, because how people are perceived, how they're labeled, can change everything. What happens when people are misunderstood in high pressure situations, especially when there's no space for softness? So we took this to the streets and asked how important it is for people in positions like law enforcement to be trained to recognize different behaviors, triggers, and responses, especially when interacting with Black men.
Alrighty, hi, my name is Desiree, and I'm the founder of the Brwn Grlz Collective, and we are out here at Soda City asking beautiful Black and brown people questions pertaining our transition from April to May. So April was Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and now we're moving into May, where we are embracing survival into softness, and she will bloom anyways. April deals with neurodivergency, and so we want to bring that in because misunderstandings can happen, and so I want to ask this question to you. How important is it for people in positions like law enforcement to be trained to recognize different behaviors, triggers, and responses, especially when interacting with Black men?
Well, I think it starts with the hiring process. I think it starts with community. I believe it also starts with engagement before the call takes place. And so I think the biggest part of law enforcement is reflective of the community. And then once you do that, I think enforcing the laws properly, understanding the laws, knowing when a victim needs to have advocacy. So instead of just asking a question, understanding the social constructs around the question, around the victim, around the potential crime or violation. So I believe it starts before the crime happens, and I think it starts with the community.
And just a deep follow-up, what happens when people are misunderstood in high-pressure situations, especially when there's no space for softness? And let's take it back to law enforcement.
There has to be room for softness. I think the law can be harsh already, so I think we look at law enforcement for humanity. I think we look at community for humanity and allowing those justice processes, procedures take place.
Okay, well, I definitely want to thank you. And can you tell our audience your name?
Derek.
Where are you from?
Derek, from Columbia, South Carolina, by way of Minneapolis.
All righty. Thank you so much for sharing your responses with us. Very deep and profound. Again, if you're not following the Brwn Grlz Collective, make sure that you are. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow.
All right, Porsche, that was a lot, huh?
That was a lot.
So let me ask you, how important it is for people in position like law enforcement to be trained to recognize different behaviors, triggers, and responses, especially when interacting with Black men?
I think it's very important for law enforcement to be trained while interacting with Black men, because there's a difference there. There may be a cultural difference. There may be a language difference. Just different things that they may not understand about the Black man or maybe the Black community in general. So it's very important that they are well and highly trained to do what they're supposed to do with to protect and serve. Me coming from the military community, I'm a veteran, so it's very important to have training. Even with the military, they train us
Mhm.
for to go out and deploy and work for the nation. So I think it's very important that we have the military, whether it's the military or law enforcement, to have that type of training, because if you don't, um, it can lead to a lot of mishaps and unfortunate situations.
And I do agree with you with that, especially with law enforcement, with our Black men. Mental health is serious. And I think, special training to know how to adapt with different situations, it will help. It will help more so with the law enforcement and connecting more with the Black community. So I do agree with you on that. Okay, Portia, do you think people are quick to control and label instead of trying to understand?
Okay. Yes, I think people are quick to label versus trying to understand.
Mhm.
Just because different perceptions, different mindsets. Um, and unfortunately, people do judge. People judge based on what they've seen or what they've experienced. So people are gonna may have a preconception, a notion in their mind of how they think a person may act, or they may see something suspicious, and it may not be something really suspicious, but because they already have this idea in their mind or this judgment in their mind of an individual, they're gonna be quick to judge.
And I also just believe that it's just like the way we are now, the world is, that we
Hmm.
already come into a situation with this perception instead of trying to understand and learn and, just try to figure out a better outcome. So I do agree with you on that part. And, that's where this conversation really deepens. And now we're going to move from survival to purpose. Your experience loss at a very young age. How did that shape the woman you have become?
Oh, it shaped me. Uh, oh gosh, it shaped me in a very deep way, because when you lose someone so young,
Mm.
you have your whole world changes.
Mhm.
Whether maybe if that was a close family member to you, or not a close family member to you, any loss is definitely going to change you. And that loss definitely changed me, because I had to grow up, with a different mindset. I had to understand things that young children don't understand at that certain age. So I had to learn how to operate differently than a lot of my peers and classmates.
Got it. And was there a time in your life where you realized you were operating in survival mode?
Absolutely. I can say I've been operating in survival mode since a very young age. Because of the loss that I've had, it felt like, okay, well, if I don't have this person in my life, all I got is me. So I have to take care and focus on me. And so that definitely led me into survival mode, where I've always had to do this for Portia. I've always had to do that. Oh, it has to get done. I gotta do this, I gotta do that. So it was always, I can count on me. So if I don't have anyone else to count on, I can do it. So that kind of led me into that, would definitely set me on the path to survival mode for a
And
very long time.
I understand that totally, completely. I'm me being an only child, so I get the survival mode.
Mhm.
What were there a moment where you felt misunderstood? And but instead
Absolutely.
of being misunderstood, were you able to label or expect just to deal with it?
Absolutely. I definitely felt like I was misunderstood a lot, mostly because for a long time I didn't talk about the loss. And so people took me being quiet as for something else, when
Mhm.
really I just had a lot of other things just on my mind, just focused on other things. So a lot of things that happened that I experienced in my life, I always felt like I was misunderstood. And then at one point, once I've got a bit older, I'll say maybe a teenager, in my teenage years, I realized like you have to regroup, um, change your thinking, and if people are going to misunderstand you, they're going to misunderstand you. But at some point, you got to learn yourself, and you got to know who you are and stand on that. And that's
So that
kind of
brings,
where,
sorry.
no,
Go
no, you're fine. That's kind of
ahead.
where I that's kind of where I had to learn to stand on my own and become my own person.
Gotcha. And that brings me to my next question. What was your turning point that shifted you from surviving to walking into your purpose?
Oh, I would say around the age of 12. Um, During the summertime, my grandmother decided to volunteer my time to help out at a summer camp over the summer. And while I did that, I actually worked with elementary children during that summer camp. And I realized that I liked working with youth at 12. And so that kind of led me into something that I wanted to do and something that was near and dear in my heart. And as I got older, it kind of put me on a path to what I would like to do and what I'm currently doing now at some point in my life.
Gotcha. So, what made you say, I'm not just going to heal, I'm going to help other girls too?
When I realized that I wasn't the only one who dealt with the loss, because growing up, it felt like I was the only person. But as I got older, I realized that I wasn't alone.
Hmm.
And I didn't want other girls to feel like they didn't have anybody else. And so that's where once I got in the position to start a nonprofit and create it, I knew that I wanted to touch girls who were either dealing with loss or maybe dealing with a strained mother daughter or family dynamic situation relationship, and just reaching out to those girls and giving them a safe space. And so that kind of led me on to breaking barriers, no boundaries.
Love that story. Love your journey. What does softness look like for you today after everything you've been through?
Softness for me looks like a lot of rest. Because again, going back to what we spoke about earlier with the being in survival mode,
Hmm.
um, I really did run a race, and while it was my race that I was running, it ran me out.
Mm,
And once I got to a position where I realized like you can't do this anymore, it's going to lead to something else.
yeah.
Um, I had to get myself together, so it looks like really just rest, really resting and saying no. A lot of
Yeah.
people have a hard time saying no, just saying no to a lot of things.
Especially if it's not good for your energy or, it's going to drain you.
Absolutely.
Um, why do you think so many people, especially women, are not given the space to move from survival into softness?
Mindset. It's the mindset. You have to get to a point where you're willing to change your perspective about things. And if you don't change your perspective, then you're always going to be thinking that what you're doing is the correct way. So you really have to be open minded and really change your mindset. So for a lot of women, if they're not willing to change their mindset, then they're going to choose, and that's their choice. They're going to choose to continue to do what they do and be in survival mode.
I agree, and it's also about growth too. You wanting more for yourself, and you feel like I gotta make a change. Like you said, it's gotta be your mindset. You gotta want it for yourself. So
Mhm.
that brings me to my last question for you. For the woman or young girls watching this still in survival mode, what would you say to her right now?
I would say to her that you are not alone. You are going to experience some obstacles. You are going to feel like you can't get up. And there are going to be times when you may feel like you hit rock bottom. But what I will say is that once you hit rock bottom, you will eventually rise and come to the top.
Yes.
And at that point, once you realize that you're coming up to the top and you change your mindset, you're going to bloom anyway.
That's right. That's right. Do you think people are given the space to move from survival into softness, or are they judged before they even get the chance to bloom?
I think it's a combination of both. I think it's a combination of both where they don't have the space, and that could be just because of their geographic location. It could be because of mindset, and or lack of knowledge. Maybe they don't know where to go. They don't know what resources are out there. And then at the same time, I believe that some people do. They judge ahead. They judge people, and unfortunately, when we judge people based off our biases or whatever the case may be, a lot of people kind of get shunned and shut out of that safe space.
I appreciate this. Like, you're very influential, like, sharing your story of a survival and then you blooming. Look how you're blooming. So I appreciate you, Porsche. And to everyone watching, if this spoke to you, this is your reminder that healing doesn't just happen individually. It happens through community. So support the work, support the mission, and support the organizations that are pouring back into the next generation. Because this is what it looks like when someone turns survival into purpose. Make sure you follow Grlz Collective, subscribe to our YouTube, and stay locked in for more community, culture, and conversation. I'm Sierra. This is the Grlz Collective. See you next time.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode. Make sure to follow us on all social media platforms. And definitely visit browngrlzcollective.org or Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Can't wait to see you next time.